Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today I want to do a Kaspa price prediction because as we've talked about on the channel before, Kaspa has really started to pick up and see a lot of momentum. And so this has kind of been giving me the question of like, well, how high could Kaspa fly, potentially in this upcoming cycle? And so what I wanted to do is go through and take a look at different bear, base, bull, and then I also threw in an ultra bull case as well, just so we could kind of get some perspective on what it could possibly do. And so anyway, I just want to give my perspective on potentially what that could look like. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive right in. So starting out looking at the Kaspa chart, we can see a couple of things. So first off, this is looking at daily candles, and we can see that Kaspa was kind of consolidating in price, but it has actually broken down and so far stayed below this trend line unless we see a very large wick up, which I find a little bit unlikely. But unless we do find a large wick up, it's probably going to be breaking out of this consolidationary period to the downside, which means we could see either a stop kind of around this 16.1 area or even potentially all the way back down to like the 14.8 area. So those are the things that kind of look to be possibilities to me. Just kind of based on what we're seeing on the chart. So as you can see, I do base all my charting within Margex just because I have been trading here pretty consistently lately. If that's something that you're interested in doing as well, Margex allows up to 100x leverage on various pairs. They've got multiple different trading pairs, and then they also do an up to $10,000 deposit bonus, and then they do have that $500,000 Kaspa airdrop ongoing through the end of the month. Obviously, we are talking about Kaspa today, so getting in on some of that airdrop could be really quite beneficial, especially based on some of the if we see some of the ultra bull cases and stuff like that going on. So anyway, that's kind of what we're looking at with the chart and also with Margex. If you do have any interest in doing leverage trading, Margex doesn't require a KYC or a VPN. So if you want to check that out, just go take a look at the link in my description below and you can get signed up that way. So moving on, we're going to be going over a couple different comparisons. So first off, as we've done before on the channel when I do price predictions, I basically only look at market cap because to me price does not really matter when it comes to trying to figure out how high some of these prices could go. So market cap is the only thing that matters. Price does not matter, and we'll essentially back into price based on market cap figures. So looking at Kaspa, what we can see is we've got an all-time high somewhere really close to 5 billion. We're sitting just over 4 billion right now, almost fully diluted. Again, remember, we like to look at the fully diluted just because that also can impact the tokenomics of things as well. So, basically the market cap and the fully diluted are very, very close. So for all intents and purposes, we're essentially just going to be using the same number. And then, so I have a couple comparisons that I want to make. And this will kind of play into the price prediction that we see in a minute. But so far, I picked three. So I've got AVAX, Cardano, and then the BNB chain. So AVAX is one that running into the 2020 bull run, it picked up a ton of steam. Obviously, new tech, it was going to be, a possible ETH killer, all this, the same, basically it ran off the same narrative that basically all of these other coins that we're going to be talking about have run off of, which is, oh, this is the ETH killer, this is the new best thing, all this type of stuff. And frankly, I think it's the exact same narrative that Kaspa would really be catching on to if it were to take off in price. So I feel like all of these are relatively fair comparisons. Now, what we can see with AVAX is it did hit an all-time high of somewhere right around $30 billion in market cap in the heat of the 2021 cycle. It then did pull back, basically 90% at its lows. And then we've started to see it rebound a little bit, but it definitely has not come back to its all-time highs yet. And now what remains to be seen is if it can come back and both breach its all-time highs and then actually find new all-time highs. So, this is something that kind of remains to be seen. I would say, AVAX is one that definitely has kind of a really strong community and a strong following, but has definitely not been able to kind of break out to that wider adoption use case. The next one I wanted to look at is Cardano. Now, Cardano is one that people may not be super impressed that I included here, but I think Cardano actually makes a ton of sense, and we'll go over why. So Cardano, as we can see, same type of thing in the 2021 bull run. Cardano hit the oh, this is the ETH killer so much harder than AVAX did. And obviously, as we can see, it's come down, again, almost 90% to its lows after this big bull run. There's been a lot more pessimism around Cardano lately just because of kind of their slow development cycle, kind of not really delivering on a lot of the promises that they'd set out 4 years ago. And I think it's just general kind of investor fatigue with the project overall. This is not to say really anything about the actual state of the project, just because as we know, the price does not always really truly indicate the value of the project. And sometimes if you can spot that accurately, you set out to make a ton of money. So, Cardano was one that they actually had an all-time high of 95 billion for their market cap. And they really, really like hit on the ETH killer like narrative very, very hard. Obviously, they've got a very strong community. Ultimately, it hasn't held up because there just wasn't the adoption. And so this was ultimately just massive speculation that then ultimately turned out to really not be the case. And so that's something that, kind of looking at the chart, I think is something that Kaspa could potentially see if it hits that ETH killer narrative harder than, like AVAX did last cycle. So, obviously we hope to not see this on the backside of it, but, if you hit that kind of speculation narrative, it wouldn't surprise me if we did, just because people are essentially kind of betting on the speculation and not what actually exists. And I would say Kaspa in its current state is probably further along than, like, for example, Cardano was at this point in time, but it's definitely not to the point, like, if people are expecting ETH just on a new chain, that like Kaspa won't be able to deliver that. So, that's something to keep in mind. The other one I wanted to mention as well is BNB. Now, BNB is a little bit different than these other two because obviously BNB has risen to higher highs, not too much higher than Cardano. Their highs is right about 110 billion. But the really important thing here is we can see, at the absolute maximum lows, it only pulled back by about 67%, which again, still a massive pullback, but much better comparatively than some of these others. And we actually have seen a recent all-time high of somewhere around very very close to what its previous all-time high was. I don't think it actually broke its previous all-time high, but it got really close. And so this is something to me that is like fundamentally very, very bullish for a coin and a project overall. Because not only did they ride that wave, I mean, I think it's fair to say that BNB was the winner of like riding the ETH killer wave. And that's frankly because they were just an ETH fork sponsored by Binance. Like, what could go wrong, right? But they obviously won that, like, they won the lottery for hitting on that narrative the hardest. But what they were able to do is they were actually able to deliver which on what some of these projects maybe weren't able to do. And so they were able to deliver much better than some of these others could. And so they've actually kept the majority of their value that they were able to establish in the 2021 bull market. So this sits, I guess, in a little bit of contrast to Cardano, where it basically has kind of given back most of the gains that it made. BNB has held on to most, if not all of them, because of the technology and their ability to execute, the product market fit, the adoption of the communities. Like, all of this type of stuff is what's led to that kind of like hold up in price. So that's something that's really important to note as well. So moving on, I wanted to get into the Kaspa bear, base, bull, and ultra bull cases. So as we can see here, we've got the Kaspa bear case. What we can see here at the bear case, we're essentially looking at like NEAR. And I know we didn't go over NEAR specifically, but NEAR is one that essentially kind of hit on that ETH killer narrative in that massive wave of speculation the least hard, right? So obviously NEAR did go on and make, very, very substantial gains. It did very well for itself, all that type of stuff, but it only did hit a $12.5 billion market cap. And that was largely in part just because it did not really capture the narrative like some of these others did. And so I would say kind of the bear case for Kaspa is looking something like NEAR, right? If we go into a cycle where there's a ton of speculation, there's a ton of essentially just bidding on everything, and Kaspa just for whatever reason isn't able to hit that narrative at all, I think a $12.5 billion market cap probably seems somewhat reasonable. Because that's fairly close to like what NEAR's all-time high market cap would be, and that would give us a price of about 52 cents, which is close to like 3x from where we're at currently, and about 2.5x from all-time highs. I would say this seems to me, at least in my opinion, pretty unlikely. I think Kaspa can do a lot better than this, but we don't know for sure, right? This is not financial advice. I am not a fortune teller. I have no clue what is actually going to happen. And so, who knows? We may never see 52 cents. This may be ridiculous right from the start. But I just think, in my opinion, this seems to be pretty low and like kind of underachieving. If Kaspa only did this, I would be, maybe a little bit confused. So moving on, we've got the Kaspa base case. Now, the Kaspa base case, we can start to see, some of our first examples. So this to me would be kind of hitting like the AVAX all-time high market cap, which is 30 billion, which is about a 7x from here and 5x of all-time high, which gets us to about $1.24. This is something that I think is very possible. again, I kind of feel like Kaspa can do better than this, but I feel like this is maybe, a somewhat fair assumption. When there's a bunch of speculation going on, some of it is kind of luck in terms of finding which ones really catch the narrative the best. I do think Kaspa has the technology. I think Kaspa has the community. I think Kaspa has kind of the marketing ability. Like they've got a lot of the things they need to really kind of catch on and hit these narratives. But if for whatever reason they get unlucky and don't, I do feel like kind of doing an AVAX type of situation seems possible to me. And so, not too bad, 7x overall. Like that's pretty good. And obviously Kaspa's seen fantastic gains already. And so, if you got in at, 1 cent or 2 cents or whatever, like, I mean, you're obviously doing a heck of a lot better than 7x, which is really good. So the next one I want to look at is the bull case. Now, this is where we compare to Cardano. So Cardano obviously hit really, really hard on the ETH killer narrative and kind of the replacement to solving the blockchain trilemma, which is ultimately what everybody's meaning when they say ETH killer, right? So that would put us at a $95 billion market cap, which gets us to just shy of $4, which would be about a 24x from right where we are right now and a 19x above its all-time high. So I feel like this is fairly reasonable just because, like I said, Kaspa did do an incredible job hitting on that ETH killer narrative. Cardano did a really good job of kind of showing this like newfangled tech that's going to change everything and do all this type of stuff, and it's in development and all this, that, and whatever else. Like Cardano did a really, really good job of doing that. And so this is something that I think Kaspa could realistically do, right? And so this to me is like, obviously it is optimistic, but I think it is possible that Kaspa could do something like this. And now the last one that I have here is the Kaspa Ultra Bull case, right? And now this one gets maybe a little bit crazy, maybe not, depending on how much you like Kaspa, right? But here we're sitting at between $4.54 and $9.08. And how we got this is anywhere between 1 to 2x BNB. Now you may be wondering, well, why would you do 2x BNB? All these other ones are just 1x, right? Well, typically, if as we see like from the 2017 to 2021 to now potentially maybe this cycle, usually, I mean, if we have to look at Bitcoin and Ethereum specifically, just because altcoins really only hit pretty hard in 2021, but they've always hit higher market cap watermarks, right? First off, it was Bitcoin hitting 100 billion, then it was 500 billion, now it's 1 trillion. And, with that, ETH kind of rose as a fraction of that, right? And so it's like, let's say in this cycle, if Bitcoin's hitting $5 trillion in market cap and ETH hits 1 trillion, that means, maybe BNB hits 500 billion. And maybe that means, 110 to 220 billion isn't that outlandish for at least one or two other projects to hit that like really, really like they are the big winners of the cycle, right? And so this is what I would consider like the Kaspa Ultra Bull cases. They are one of the like very few really massive winners of the cycle. And they're the ones that kind of ascend to like that you're just below like the big dogs kind of like market cap level, right? And so I think that's possible, again, given kind of the tech. I think this is a lot more contingent on community involvement, tech development, product market fit, having one or multiple, I mean, the more the merrier, right? But having multiple apps that really hit like product market fit really, really hard, like a pump.fun, or, I guess of like the previous cycles, maybe like NFTs that were on Ethereum, like having something like that really kind of has its own cycle in itself. If they could do that on Kaspa, that is where we start to see numbers like this, in my opinion, at least. So anyway, that's kind of my my different price predictions for Kaspa. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd be really interested to hear, do you think I'm crazy at, predicting a possible $9 Ultra Bull? Do you think that's like your bear case? I'd just be interested to hear kind of what your guys' thoughts are based on this information. So also, if you did enjoy the video, please do give me a like and subscribe. It really, really does help me out. It also helps push this video to more people, so we can get more comments and feedback and just takes on what people's thoughts on the Kaspa the Kaspa results will be this cycle. So anyway, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.